Welcome to the Cut for Time podcast here at the Canton United Methodist Church. My name is Pastor Clay. I'm joined by Eric Stearns, and today we're digging into our sermon from Sunday from the Come to Your Senses series, and we talked about our sense of hearing and how we listen and hear for the goodness of God. So we're going to talk about a couple of the stories I had to cut and also dig into what it means for us to listen and hear for God's goodness in our day and age. So let's get into it.
Sounds good. I think it was a long one.
What's that?
The sermon was a long one.
Yeah, with the
song.
with the song and everything.
Minutes.
Yep. Yep. I'm thankful that we didn't end up in copyright jail. I don't quite know how all that works with posting music. I threw our streaming license in the description of the podcast just to make sure. Because we do have the right to stream music that's covered under CCLI.
Sure.
But I don't know if the podcast counts or not. So if you're listening to the podcast and you have answers, let me know.
There you go.
Yeah, one of the stories I wanted to tell on Sunday, but was cut for time, was that when I was in college at USF, I was a theology philosophy major, as most of you know, and I had to take an Old Testament elective, and my Old Testament elective was on the wisdom literature of the Old Testament. So Psalms, Proverbs, Song of Solomon, and Job were kind of the purview of that class. And during the Psalms portion was my professor, Dr. John Higgle's favorite part, because part of Higgle's background was that he was a musician. Before he was before he was a pastor, and then a theology professor, he marched in the Disneyland band in California. And he ruined his embouchure, he ruined his lips by bouncing a trombone off of it for as long as he played. And one of the things that he was, another part of his story and another part of his life was that he was a part of an orchestra that was doing a musical setting of Psalm 42, 43, and 44, which there are textual clues that that's one long piece that's been broken into 3 different Psalms. And it's all about how, God's going to provide and God's blessings are going to be enough. And it happened to be in a season of his life where he was listening and hearing and wanting to listen and hear for God's goodness, but couldn't because he was so blinded by his circumstances. Like he said, he told when we were studying these Psalms, he told our class that, he had $8 in his pocket and that's about all he had. That he did not know. Was facing just the lowest of lows in his life, and here he is playing night after night these beautiful words about how God's going to provide and how that was so strengthening for him, how that was a time where he was where he was going to listen and hear the goodness of God in very real and tangible ways, and that was kind of very eye-opening for me. And then another thing that Higgle did with the class was that, a lot of the Psalms, actually all of the Psalms, were meant to be sung and were pieces of music, were Hebrew poetry that were put to music. That's why the inscription in the Psalm that we read on Sunday had the, musical directions to be on the Gittith, and, was a Psalm of Asaph, who was a temple musician. And so all of these Psalms have both ancient and modern musical settings. And so every day when we would cover a psalm in class, part of our coverage of that psalm, part of our study would be to listen to a piece of music as well that was inspired by and based off of those psalms. So that was a time in life where we were truly listening and hearing for God's goodness, and a time where my iTunes library exploded and my iTunes gift card buying habit kind of got into a little bit of hot water. But because every time we would listen to a song, you're just like, oh, I want to have that song, and I have it's called the Symphony of Psalms, the piece that Dr. Higgle was talking about. I could whip that out and listen to that again and be reminded of not only Higgle's story but where I was in my own life when I was hearing those things. So that was definitely a power. There's a powerful connection between the things that we hear and our experiences of God. And that's because there is such a rich and diverse, library of Christian and biblical music. So what is your go-to music? If it's up to you, what do you listen to?
It's a mixture of Life 96.5, so that's the
Mhm.
Christian radio station around here for those of you that aren't from the Sioux Falls area.
Yep.
And then it's Brad Paisley, Garth Brooks, and Big and Rich.
Nice.
Those are my
Okay.
three go-tos.
Nice.
And Big and Rich is fun because, well, even actually all three of them at one point or another, they have those more gospel songs
Mm-hmm.
that you realize that they're one of us too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Definitely.
And they
Definitely.
they believe in the same things we do,
Mm-hmm.
and you can really relate to to those people then.
Yeah.
It's easier. And that I've grown up listening to those guys, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy that. How about for you?
Yeah, so very diverse mix as well. Anywhere from, hymns and orchestras and organs and classic Christian gospel music. I've listened to a lot of the Gaither Vocal Band. I've sung a lot of Gaither Vocal Band music in my life, and really like a lot of their stuff. And then just. Yeah, really anything. I mean, my Spotify gives me like daily mixes, and it's anything, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like right now, I've been listening to a lot of marching band music because sports are coming back and college football's coming back, and it's kind of nice to hear band when you're working on something, trying to get excited about stuff. Just kind of gets you pumped. Yeah, really, it's really a mixed bag, and it just kind of depends on my mood. There are a couple of composers I listen to quite a bit. Frank DeKelly has written just, a vast catalog of music from different, flavors and styles. I like his setting of Amazing Grace quite a bit. Really cool percussion things in there because that's kind of my background. Contemporary Christian music as well. Not only just the stuff that I listened to growing up, but even modern stuff that's being released by like Hillsong and Bethel and those kind of juggernauts of Christian music.
Yeah.
So
That's cool.
Yep.
So one thing I was thinking about with this message and kind of tying into that question.
Yeah.
Brad Paisley's song "When I Get Where I'm Going."
Like
That song, it's just so easy to relate to, and you can just feel it. You can feel it when he sings that song. That it's so real to him.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just because he's a really good performer. I don't know.
Right.
But there's something to that song.
Mm-hmm.
It talks about when he gets to heaven, what he's going to do, and all this stuff, and he talks about the people that he's missed.
Yeah.
That he's going to get to meet when he gets there. And I don't know, that song just stands out to me as something that
Definitely.
I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And once again, it's someone who has been popular for a long time,
Sure.
but still has that Christian background and
Definitely. And unfortunately, sometimes it can happen that popular acts do a Christian album or a gospel album because it's promotable or because it will sell. I mean, it's almost a little pandery, but I mean there are certain artists where you just buy it, not buy it commercially, where you buy it you understand that this is coming from the core of who that person is.
Yep.
Vince Gill, Go Rest High on the Mountain.
Yes.
That's another that was born out of his own life experiences of losing family members. Then you just buy it. You just buy that song. You buy the emotion behind that song.
Garth Brooks Unanswered Prayers, which I think we've mentioned on the podcast
Yes.
before. But
Yep.
you buy that.
Absolutely.
He prayed that this girl was going to be his
Right.
wife, and then
Yeah.
God had a completely different plan.
Yep.
And he's okay with it.
Yeah.
I mean, it turns out for the better.
Absolutely. Yep. Some of God's greatest gifts are all too often unanswered prayers. That lyric would be what they describe living rent free in your head. That is definitely something that I think about quite a bit. Yeah. There's an authenticity there that really I can get behind.
That lyric has stuck out to me ever since we built this twin home. Because for the longest time, or I would pray every single night because we were stressed about having a baby. We were stressed about Jenna not working. She
Sure.
decided that she wasn't going to teach anymore, and
Yep.
it was a joint decision, and I think
Right.
it was definitely the best decision for our family.
Yep.
We just need to figure out financially how we're going to make it work.
Right.
And so after we got the twin home finished, we were trying to get it sold,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't selling, and we had Jenna not working. Jenna found out she was pregnant. It was the summer of 2018, and so it would not stop raining, and so I had
Mm-hmm.
80 acres that didn't get planted.
Sure.
And then I found out I couldn't get crop insurance on it, so all of a sudden I had a bunch of sunk money there, and all these things just kept piling up, and I was just praying and praying and praying that the twin home would sell, and that would be the way that we would get through
Sure.
that hard time.
Right.
And it's just now recently sold, and I think back to all of the things that God helped us work through from then
Mhm.
until now,
Yeah.
and the strength that it's given us to have
Yeah.
that unanswered prayer happen.
Right.
I don't know, just it sticks out to me. That those lyrics stick out to me all the time.
Definitely.
All the time.
Definitely.
It's the song I
Yeah.
sing to Oliver every night I put him to bed.
Oh,
It's that song. So
nice.
it means
That's
nothing to
awesome.
him right now, but
Well, yeah, but I mean,
mm-hmm.
again, it's that, on Sunday we talked about how, in the midst of our weariness, we claim these words that God is our strength, that these words that, would have been sung at these festival times that the psalm was intended for, we claim God as our strength in the midst of our weariness and in the midst of our frustration and our exhaustion, of our uncertainty. We claim this promise. We claim these words as ours.
Yeah.
And that's listening and hearing for listening and hearing the goodness of God.
Mm-hmm. I always take strength in singing. I think, and I know you do too, but
Oh, definitely.
there's just something about being able to just sing,
Yep.
and it just kind of takes you to a different place that just kind of takes the weight off.
Yes. And there's also strength in being around others when you cannot sing. Like where the emotion is just too great to sing. This happened on our mission trip to Seattle. It was in a very uncertain time in my ministry career where a lot of weird and not so good things were happening. And we were in Seattle, and I got a call from my senior pastor, and there was some stuff going down with the DS and some, I literally did not know what I was coming home to. And we had this moment of worship, and we had communion, and there was a kneeling rail in the church, and we were invited to just stay and remain and have prayer, and we're singing a song, and this whole group of people is singing, and I'm just knelt in prayer, and someone knew, a clergy friend of mine was kind of in on the whole thing and kind of knew exactly what I was dealing with and whatever, and he just came and laid his hands on me in prayer. I just broke. Every stressor, every emotion, everything just came out in just tears and sobs and sighs. And I wanted to sing because I loved the song that was being sung, but I just couldn't. But someone else could. I just found that there's so much strength. I mean, that's why meeting together is so important. That's why, singing together was so important. And I know there are churches that suspended singing for a long time. There are some churches that still aren't singing when they gather, and I cannot fathom not singing in worship.
Nope.
I can't fathom that. It is such a powerful moment for us. And, I saw a couple posts on Facebook this past couple weeks about, how, by singing old hymns is how a lot of people learn what the faith is in the first place. Our theology, and especially in United Methodist terms, Don Salyers wrote a book called Worship as Theology, and he very much tied the idea that our faith is a sung faith. We're inspired by the Wesleys. Charles Wesley wrote over 7,000 hymns in his lifetime. We are a people that have sung our faith and sung our theology. And to divorce that has been really hard for some people, and it's not a decision that anyone made lightly, and I don't fault them for making a different decision than I have, but I just cannot even fathom the idea of not being able to sing in worship, because it is such a powerful moment for all of us. Even if we're singing a song that the praise band's singing and we don't know it, that doesn't take the power out of it.
Right.
Like it can still be just, a powerful thing to just be in worship and to listen to good singing. So, which is part of why I took the lyrics off the screen for On Use on Sunday. It's just because I wanted us to have an opportunity to just sit and listen and to hear what God had for us in that moment. So
I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
I always enjoy old hymns, like How Great Thou Art. Everyone knows it, and you can just sit there and you can just feel the warmth in the building.
Absolutely.
When everyone's singing that song.
Yep.
And there's just something about it.
That one's a belter. That's all there is to it.
Yep. And you can just feel God there.
Absolutely. Yep.
But yeah, I enjoyed Sunday when they were singing, and it just to just be still and listen, which I am terrible at. But
same. Which kind of ties back to another story I had to cut from the sermon on Sunday. I think I may have told this story from the pulpit before, but I couldn't remember, and so I just and I ran out of time, obviously, because we didn't go long on the service, but the sermon was definitely longer than. But anyway, when I was in college at Northern State, I was a part of a group called Phi Mu Alpha Sinfonia, and one of our big things was that we would just have listening nights. You could bring any piece of music whatsoever, and just the only rule was that you listen. You can discuss it afterwards and pick it apart afterwards and say what you didn't like about it afterwards or what you did like about it afterwards. But for those 3.5 to 4 minutes, your job was to just listen. And, that was so, it's an interesting way to get to know people, but also just a powerful way of really showing that respect and camaraderie that's, that fraternal nature of things. To just sit and listen to someone else's music and then, have some conversation about it afterwards and really talk about why it was powerful or why it wasn't powerful, or, from a music nerdy side of things, what you wanted them to do differently with how something was sung, or, we weren't listening to gospel music by any stretch with that group of people. But, there was an opportunity there to really listen, to listen and to hear. And then, for me as a gospel thinker, to say, okay, I heard this and I kind of want to poke at this a little bit and, broaden our understanding a little bit if we can.
So we've done taste.
Yep.
And we've done listening.
Yep.
Or hearing.
Yes.
What's the next sense we're going to go through?
So Sunday is going to be Smell Sunday. Smell and blank doesn't really roll off the tongue very well. So the sermon title is A Scent Pleasing to God. And we're coming out of Psalm 141, and it's a Psalm of David. And basically, David advances the idea that our prayers rise to God like an incense. And so he talks about how he wants this prayer to rise to God, and then the rest of the psalm is the prayer. And what David is praying for is God's help to live a righteous life. Where his prayer is all about how the people around him are living unrighteously, and he is striving to be better. He's striving to live righteous, and he is striving, and he knows that he can't do it by himself, and he knows that he needs God's help in the midst of it. And so the question becomes for us, what is prayer to us? Do we see our prayer as an incense, and as an incense rising to God, and then do we see our lives as a scent that's pleasing to God? Are we living in that godly way that David is striving for? And do we recognize, and in what ways do we recognize that happens through our reliance on who God is? And so that's what we're going to dig into. It's also UMW Sunday, so there'll be some UMW members helping me lead elements of worship. But since I'm a member of UMW, that stands for United Methodist Women. If you're not a part of the United Methodist Church, but it's United Methodist Women, and as clergy, I am a member of UMW, so I get to preach.
Perfect.
Great. Yes. Looking forward to it.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us in this week's podcast. Join us again on Sunday or next week's podcast.
Thanks for listening to our Cut for Time conversation. Join us for worship in person or on Facebook Live Sundays at 10 o'clock Central Time. And now go in peace and serve the Lord.
Head over to our YouTube channel and click the subscribe button. Over on YouTube, you will find videos of our entire worship service, a video cast of our weekly Cut for Time conversation with Pastor Clay and Eric, songs from our praise band One Way Up, and a bunch of other great things as well. Just search for Canton United Methodist Church. It would mean a lot to have you subscribe.